Hi everyone, thank you for joining me again for another week of this podcast. As per usual, I'm going to read an experience from the endof.org website. This one's from a girl called Shara. Sound and music are two different qualities of expression, and both have been equally important to me as an extension of my artistic nature. I didn't choose either as a career or a vocational path. I focused instead on graphic arts because I needed a dependable paycheck. Over the past 3 decades, I became so involved in my design career that I was not even remotely aware of my body's needs, and I routinely spent 10 to 12 hours per day on computers creating designs for clients. I have always loved this work, but it is destroying my hands and arms. This explains how things got so bad without me noticing. My workaholicism had blinded me from the truth. Much of the nerve functions in my arms and hands had become badly damaged, and in some cases could not be restored. There were procedures that could help, but since I had progressively lost the use of my thumbs, index fingers, hands, arms, and a range of motion in my neck, these procedures would need to happen in stages. 4 surgeries over the course of 2 years helped me somewhat, but didn't correct all the pain-causing conditions, and never would entirely. I eventually regained some function, but even today, I live with a constant reminder of the damages done, and I am able to control pain and enhance the quality of my life thanks, in part, to healing techniques I practice each day. To some, this midlife change of course would seem like a tragedy. I thought for a long while too. When my hands ceased to work and pain was a constant companion, I felt my life was over. Certainly my career was over and I had no other options. I was devoted to graphic design work. Looking back, I see what a blessing in disguise my difficulties turned out to be. I opted for a 5th surgery, the one that might be the silver bullet. This would be a very long surgery, and a longer lasting anesthetic was ordered. During the procedure, something went horribly wrong. First, it was injected. It is thought that the injection was made into my main artery instead of using it as a nerve block into the nerve. The second phase of the problem was that I had an allergic reaction to the mix of anesthetic. The doctor was talking to someone while she administered the injection, and I remember feeling uncomfortable with that. Expecting that I would be out soon, I closed my eyes and waited. Then I remembered my body reacting. I could feel a burning sensation overall. My legs and arms started to flail. I felt myself yelling out loud, "Something is wrong." I felt the presence of an enormous compression in my chest and head. I could not seem to get anyone's attention as I screamed. I later learned that I never made an external sound. The sound of my voice was happening in my mind, and that explains why no one was paying attention to me. Soon, all feelings ceased, but I realized I was floating around the room looking down at my body. I had an opportunity to look closely into the face of each person working on me. By this time, there was intense panic in the operating room, but yet I felt peaceful. I seemed to have a heart connection to each person there, especially with the doctor. She was terrified and working hard to bring me back into my body. I didn't want to get back into my body. I hovered over the left shoulder of my surgeon and remained there until something pulled me completely away from the operating room. I felt an intense squeezing sensation in my head and felt a huge pain as I heard a shrill, loud sound. It lasted a few seconds and then I felt complete peace. What I experienced was like being sucked out of the operating room through a tiny pin dot of light. As my eyes adjusted to the space, I seemed to see tiny pin dots of light everywhere in front of me. I realized I was sitting in a comfortable chair moving towards these pin dots, and they were getting larger. Eventually, one of them grew into this huge beacon of brilliant white light, glowing at me as I moved closer and closer. I felt myself watching with amusement as I pulled inside the light in an easy chair. I realized someone was with me. It seemed like it was a man, but I never really knew. The being was communicating with me through thoughts, no talking and no need to use words. It happened so fast. Now I was inside another awareness. My memories are as vivid today as they were at the time. I knew I was dead to the earth, but I was just fine with that possibility. I actually felt very comfortable with no longing or panic to return. I had no questions, only complete acceptance. It was peaceful, comfortable, and I felt very safe. I learned many things. I saw and heard many things. I felt as if there was a vast storage of information that filled me with each glance in any direction. Today, I understand what a beautiful phenomenon I experienced. Being outside of my body, traveling outside the limits of our reality, space and time was a cherished opportunity to know more about the fabric of our universe. While I was gone, the being that was with me showed me many things. My memories of those things are still vivid and alive. Everything from love to creation to math to humanity to music. I then realized all the other things had stopped coming, and I was fully engaged in the most astounding musical consciousness I'd ever experienced. Music was not only something to hear, but to feel, to taste, to smell, and to see. Thinking about it later, I realized I didn't hear any of the music through my ears, and yet there was an impression of music filling in my hearing senses, and it included a whole body sensation. Although in this reality I did not have a body, so what I experienced was the sensation of music filling everything without the limits of my individual perspective. The indescribable music caused me to experience visual riots of colour, like no colours I'd ever perceived in ordinary reality. I still cannot describe either phenomenon adequately to others. I felt the presence of knowledge and wisdom about the music and the colours, but never actually perceived being taught anything specifically. During the OBE, I was at peace on the other side, and only thought about my kids for a second, knowing they would be okay. I was prepared to stay there. But soon a male voice told me I had to go back. It wasn't words I heard, just an understanding that I had to go back. I remember not wanting to leave. What for? So I could work more, live in more pain? I was divorced, kids were growing, and felt I could easily be finished on earth. But it was not my time, or so I was being told. After a while, I felt the sensation of intense squeezing again. It had a sound too. It was higher pitched than the exit sounds, and seemed to exert even greater pressure on all sides of my head, like a vice fitted without loudspeakers blasting sound into my mind with some kind of crushing on my skull. That sensation brought about the end of the celestial vocalizations and the space travel. I quickly became aware that someone was shouting my name over and over. I felt my eyes pop open, and I was face to face with a panic-stricken doctor a few inches from my nose yelling at me, trying to coax me back into my body. Then I was back in my body, but then quickly put under again. I don't know why. Later I woke up in a recovery room and the surgery had not been performed. I never saw angels, heard God speak, or felt any glorification of any sort through the experience. But I heard voices and music. I never saw loved ones or experienced past, present, or future. I had never been religious. I had no preconceived notions of God or angels. I had never even considered what heaven might be like. Maybe that's why I didn't have a religious experience. but I did experience music in a different way. It was dear to me. Apparently, when I died, I experienced the musician's version of Satori, light, sound, and color. My surgeon visited me that evening in the recovery room. He asked me if I wanted an attorney. He said he was curious to know what I had experienced. He mentioned that he felt me hovering above his left shoulder. This was an amazing confirmation. I had been there for a while. He admitted there had been a procedural mistake, and it had caused my heart and breathing to cease for 2 minutes and 17 seconds. There was also my adverse reaction to the chemicals injected. The eventual surgery 6 weeks later didn't fix my body, and the future looked unbearable to me because I was now permanently disabled and experiencing severe pain all day, every day. I meditated and studied, looking for some way to heal. I sold my house that freed me up to travel. I met many people who had experienced NDEs and OBEs, and they helped me to understand that all the information that I had acquired. I had an intense longing for the music I had heard on the other side while I was dead. This desire drove me searching all over the USA and parts of the world for someone who could help me understand the sounds that intoxicated me with love and bliss. Academic studies only address part of the phenomenon of sound healing. I studied music therapy as well as music in general. But for sound healing, I had to learn from those who actually practice the craft all over the world. Even with years of music education and research, I still did not hear the sounds I heard when I was out of body, and none of my mentors or teachers could even imagine what I might have heard. In spite of all the help I was receiving from sound healers and shamans, I still suffered debilitating pain every day. It has now been 13 years since my near-death experience. 6 years ago, I moved to a little cottage on a creek in a redwood forest and began a different kind of healing journey that sharpened my senses, my hearing, and my greater understanding of the true healing properties of sound and nature. I also felt a constant flow of information that came from the experience while I was out of body. I realized it would be the natural world that would heal me. Over the course of time I spent alone, I was still using my own voice to soothe my body pain, sharpen my brain functions, and bring clarity to my future. But at the same time, I was listening to the sounds of the birds, the wind, the ocean, the creek. I was talking to trees and animals and listening for their information to enter my consciousness. Soon I realized my pain had diminished dramatically. I was finally healing. One day, as I was deep in meditation, singing to my body, I heard the sound of the music I had heard on the other side. That ecstatic sound was inside me. I was hearing myself sing in languages I didn't know and make sounds I had never heard before. It was my body and my voice, but consciousness was far away, as if it had taken a spiral path upwards and was quite distant from my physical body. I could hear the sound as it travelled up a spiral and straight into my heart. It became amplified, but not through volume. It was amplified in richness and in tone. This was entirely beyond my understanding. I had never heard that sound come out of me like that before. My death was a blessing. My rebirth is still unfolding. That's her experience. Interesting little journey she's had here. So this is the story of another atheist who has had a near-death experience, and it has changed her experience in this lifetime quite substantially. A little bit different in terms of her not uh, latching on to the light or God or angels or anything like that so much, more a pursuit of this music she discovered in this other realm, which was quite magical to her. And this is the part of the experience that for her was the most profound. And I guess everyone's going to have their own unique little way of connecting to the universe or to source. And for her, it's music. And what a, there's music is pretty profound to all of us in this realm. So what better way to get to know God better than through music? And obviously, music in this other realm is more profound than it is here. And I talked about this a couple of weeks ago on another episode. So let's go through her experience again. She is unwell. She's spending a lot of time on a computer creating designs for patients. She sounds like a very creative type of person, but this time spent on a computer is quite harsh on her body. She says it's destroying her arms and her legs. I can't really get in my head how this is going on. Like, is there some underlying condition there that is causing her body to deteriorate? I guess there's reasons for that, and I have heard, I guess, of things like repetitive strain injury, where working on a computer can cause your body to decline or degrade. So I guess this is what's happening to her. She's a workaholic. She says she is totally addicted to her job, and this is how she spends most of her time, and feels that in hindsight this has not only been difficult for her physical body, she just feels that it has totally drained her, and doesn't feel like in a good place. So this degradation of her body has given her a sort of fork in the road type moment. She has to go and get some surgery in order to get rid of the pain, basically, to try to live a normal life and get back to her graphic design work. But in the so what does she do? She goes to the doctor and sees the anaesthetist, who recommends an operation, and so they put her under, and the anaesthetist is putting the needle in, and as she does that, she feels this intense burning sensation over her legs and her arms, and they start to flail, and she feels herself yelling out, something is wrong. But in this case, it's not a verbal something is wrong, it's just a something is wrong that she's saying in her head. Soon this burning sensation stops though, and she finds herself popped out of her body. So this is the first part of her near-death experience, so to speak. She's no longer in that body. She's floating in the room. She's looking down at all these doctors working on her, and she says she's able to have a heartfelt connection with each person there. So what does that mean? What is that heartfelt connection? I guess that means empathy, perhaps reading thoughts, putting themselves in their shoes, being able to understand what's going on in their lives. I don't know, the person writing this experience doesn't give us any more detail than that, but we often hear that when a person is no longer in the body, they're able to read thoughts and see what other people's life situations are like. So I'm assuming this is what this lady means as well. And she says she has even more direct connection with the person, the doctor who has actually put the anesthetic in, and can really see the concern on this doctor's face, because obviously this doctor is going to be the one that gets in trouble if she dies, or if anything gets even worse from this procedure, because she's the one who is responsible for that medication and that side of the procedure. So she finds she is connecting to this doctor the most, and can feel this doctor's fear the most. But after this happens, after she has this little floating type experience and this connection with this doctor in particular, she says she feels an intense squeezing sensation in her head and feels a huge shrill like sound, and it only lasted a few seconds, but after that it's total peace. And she feels like and for me this is probably the part where the soul or the spirit or the consciousness actually leaves the body. For me, those words are interchangeable. I guess you could even throw awareness in there too. Everyone's going to have their own opinion as to what you call this life force within us that um, has the ability to do many wondrous things, and they're just a few words of describing it. There's probably many, many more. But she is now being sucked out of her body entirely, and she says she feels like she's moving towards these small dots of white light. And these lights, as they so often do, get larger as time goes by and eventually become a huge white beacon. And after she merges into this beacon of light, where it gets interesting or more complex in terms of there being interactions with other spiritual entities, and she's no longer in this physical realm. It's like she's completed the crossover from the physical realm to the spiritual dimension, and she's able to start connecting with other spiritual beings. So this communication, as per usual, is not done like you and me talk. It's a communication through thought, through telepathy, and she doesn't go into much more detail than that, than to say there's no words needed. It's all a very natural process, and not based on what she says here, but through other experiences. This form of communication is a lot more clear, concise, less likely to be misunderstood. I mean, you just take your own life, for example, in this realm, and the difficulty you can have communicating with others through words is pretty easy to see. It's hard for me to use words on this podcast to get across exactly what I get out of an experience, and I think most of us would probably agree that words are insufficient to describe this experience. Even they're just, it's, if you think about it, it's just air coming out of my lungs and being manipulated by muscles in my mouth to make a sound that my mind has come up with. And it's such a limited way of communicating in terms of the depth of expression that can be given just by air being moved through a few muscles and creating a sound. It's not going to adequately go into the depth of complexity the mind can manufacture. But that's all we've got at the moment. Sometimes I like to think that eventually, as we become more spiritually evolved, we potentially will be able to communicate in the way we hear about in these experiences in this realm here. I don't see why not. I think there's evidence already of some people having that strong connection with each other. I do remember reading an experience or two where two close people, usually family members, have been able to tap into this telepathic way of communicating. And is it just a matter of time before this is a mainstream phenomenon and we're all able to do it? like I said, I would have thought so. I don't see why not. I think it's eventually going to happen if we go down that path of spiritual evolution and get to that point where our bodies become secondary and we're more attuned with the spiritual awareness that we are, then we're able to tap into these gifts that are available when people cross over into this next dimension and utilize them and manufacture them more within this realm that we live in as humans. And at the moment, I think most of us are more ego driven, more driven by our human needs than what we learn from these experiences our souls are made of. Um, but yeah, it's that fine balance between body and spirit and being able to, I don't know, understand what the spirit is and understand the spirit's relationship in the body. I'm still trying to work out what that is. I do not know. I often ask, ponder these things out loud when I'm doing this podcast. What is the spirit's relationship to the body, and what is the point of it? Like, what's the spirit there to do? Is it there just to watch and learn and feel what it's like to be a human, or is it there to try and push through and make a difference? I guess it's hard to know. So this lady then feels very comfortable with this guide or being or God even. It doesn't really go into who this being is. She just feels very comfortable. She doesn't want to come back to this realm. She feels very much at peace. But the interesting thing is she doesn't have any questions. She says she has no questions. She just totally accepts where she is. I don't know, actually. And then the next line says, and I guess this is the reason she doesn't have any questions, is because she says she can just glance in any direction and there's like a wealth of information there for her to tap into. And I guess if you've got that ability to download all this information just by looking in a certain direction, she wouldn't have any questions because all those questions wouldn't be necessary because that answers to them all would be right there before you even thought them. And the idea of this universe being filled with this incredible storage of information is incredible, and it's frustrating because it's right there in front of us, yet we can't, for whatever reason, tap into that. And why you have to die to experience this information is another interesting point. Like, is this separation between that well of data and our world intentional? Like, is it meant to be that way? Are we restricted from accessing all the answers to all the big questions for a reason? Like, why is it that we can't get all the answers to the questions we have right now? Even just simple ones like, well, they're not simple, but like, what happens when you die? Why can't we all just know that? It's kind of cruel in a way to I feel to not have that information at our fingertips when we would like it, and the fact that we have to, well, I have to rely on what other people experience to find that information out is frustrating because, like I've said before many times on this podcast, the best teacher is your own experience. So having to go off other people's experiences is a little annoying for me personally, but that's all we've got, and I guess we should be grateful because this information would have been very hard to come by just even 50 years ago before the internet, and for us to be able to tap into all these different experiences is a gift, but at the same time, it's frustrating to not have that information at our own little personal fingertips whenever we would like it. And yeah, it's hard, but that's just what this experience is like. And I guess we just have to have faith that God will come through and give us that information eventually when the time is right. It might not be till the day we die, but if that is so, we don't have much choice, do we? I was actually talking to one of the residents at the aged care I worked at last night and started talking to him about spiritual matters because I was feeling a little bit low in faith and needed a bit of a pick me up. When you're feeling low and tired and you get that disconnection and frustration at not knowing the things you would like to, and for me, I just try and bring a little bit of God into my life however I can, which isn't always easy because when you're feeling like that, you kind of resent the universe and you resent, um, you know, having to exist in this dark planet and the challenges and the suffering that is all around. But yeah, so last night I just decided to talk to one of the residents and ask him about his spiritual journey, and yeah, and he just shared with me that God reveals to himself or herself to us all in such a unique way, and it happens when it needs to happen. So you just got to be patient. And I told him a little bit about my story, and he was like, yeah, that's just the way it is. That's the way God is, like it was a totally normal thing. Whereas for me, it was like this profound, life-changing event, and he's just like, just sort of saying, oh yeah, that's just normal, that's just the way it goes. And it was kind of nice to hear someone talk about it in that way, because I when this all started happening, I was like, oh my God, I'm so special. This is so amazing to have this happen to me. But to hear it um, explained to me in ways that, well, not explained, just described in ways that, oh yeah, this is normal. This is like run of the mill sort of stuff. It was good. It was good. It was good to know that the sort of things that have happened to me are pretty mainstream and common, and you just, I don't know, in my country, in my society, you just don't hear about it that much. You don't hear about people talking about their connection to God and how it all started and what's that's like, because I don't know, I guess people are afraid to do that. But anyway, this guy was beautiful. He was so open and calm and just said, yeah, look, everyone, God is going to be revealed to us all. It might not be till the last breath we have, but some of us are going to get more exposure than others during our uh, living years, and who knows why that reason is. But yeah, I just found it reassuring, I guess, to have a little bit of a chat to someone who was a little bit older and wiser than me, and a reminder that just because you are not feeling connected to God at this present moment doesn't mean the next day you won't. It just sort of comes and goes, and it depends on so many things that are going on in your life. But yeah, the more you welcome that connection in, the more you encourage God into your life, the more likely it is. And that can be done in a variety of ways: meditating, going to church, talking about it, researching it. Yeah, we're all unique, and it's going to come in different ways. So if you haven't got that connection yet, just keep working on it. It will appear. So in this lady's case, she has received lots of answers from this being. Like I said, it doesn't go into what this being was. Is it God? Is it a guide? Is it her higher self? It doesn't say, but this being is linked to this wealth of information that is all around, and she's able to learn about everything from love to creation to maths to humanity to music. Okay, now I want to stop there and have another another little bit of a whinge. I want more information. Tell me more about what this information is like. I need to know. No, look, you gotta laugh because I think at the end of the day, you on some level you just have to be comfortable, accepting that you're never gonna know all this stuff that these people that go to this other dimension and learn about. Our human brains don't seem to be equipped to deal with this kind of information. But yeah, I'd still, and this is my crazy ego just wanting to know more and learn more, and it just craves to know. So can you just tell us a little bit more about creation, or a little bit more about how the humans evolved? A couple of my um, really keen to know queries my mind often works over. Wouldn't it be great to, I don't know, just know about where we all came from, how this all came about, like what's the point of it all? I just, I there's something deep inside me, or is it just my ego that wants to know these questions? I guess it's not deep inside of me because that would be my soul, and my soul would know all these questions, so the answers to all these questions. So I don't know. I throw my hands up in the air and say, look, I surrender. I keen to know, but if not, then so be it. Also happy either way. Um, it's just the human condition, isn't it? To want to explore and find out things we don't. And potentially that's why that veil is there, that veil of knowing everything, and the veil of human information is there to give us that constant drive to push for more information, to push to evolve, and push to learn about why things work the way they do. I guess because it gives us something to do. It gives us some purpose in life. When we don't know the answers, we can go and try and find them out. Can the human ever truly understand God, though? That's the question. That's the question I want to know. Can it understand what God is? Is that possible? Can that bridge between the physical and the so-called spiritual dimension ever be bridged and understood? And if it does, what would the human experience be like if we all knew we were eternal souls and we didn't have to die? Would we change as beings? Would we still fight each other? Would we still hate each other? Would we still have wars? Part of me thinks, yeah, probably, because the human is kind of a destructive kind of species. But I think it would definitely help relieve a lot of struggle if there was no fear of death. People wouldn't be so desperate and be competing so much, and more likely to share what we've got. That's just my theory. So come on, people, let's wake up. Let's take these near-death experiences on board and take them to heart and truly believe what they're saying. Because once that fear of the unknown of death is gone, we can be so much freer, I think, and go and tackle things in life that that they might seem like a dangerous path to take in certain ways. But if we know that this experience we're having is just a bit of a game, and we can't really get hurt. I mean, we can get hurt, but not the eternal part of ourselves is untouchable. So I'm not saying go out and do something life threatening, just tackle those experiences in life that might seem scary, but we don't do it because we're afraid of the outcomes. But if we know that this life is just a temporary experience that can be repeated again through reincarnation if we want to, we're more likely to go out there and give something a crack if we um, if we can see the nature of this life is just a little bit, it's just we should be having a little bit more fun, I think, and not taking it so seriously. So I guess this brings us to the major, well, the bit that had the biggest impact on this lady who wrote the experience. This is when she starts to hear this music, and it's funny. I talked about the musical experience of NDEs in a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, here we go again. It's another example of what someone experienced in this other dimension of what music was like. As per usual, they say words aren't adequate to describe what is actually going on, but the music there's colors, there's feelings, there's a whole different ball game going on, and I can't wait to see what this is like. Because you go to a nightclub or a rave or a concert, and the sound is pretty amazing, and the experience is cool with the lasers or the lights going on, and it's pretty amazing. But to think that there is this next level is pretty exciting to me, because I can't wait to it and wait to experience it, and it has such a profound impact on her that she pretty much devotes her life to music from there on in. She decides that she needs to experience what she did in this realm, and goes and learns all about sound healing, as she feels that this is the pathway to her recovery, her as a way of getting rid of the pain she's feeling from a physical point of view in this realm. So the being then says, look, you've got to go back. And of course, there's the usual resistance. Even though she has kids, she feels they've grown up, and there's not much point. The being, so she says back to this being, what do I want to go back for? So I have to go and do more work. So I have to live in pain. I'm not a young mum anymore. The kids are all growing up. What would be the purpose of going back to Earth? And as she sort of starts thinking this stuff, she gets pushed back into her body. And in her case, everyone's re-entry to the body is different, but usually it comes with some discomfort in terms of the restriction of being in the body again. In her case, she feels an intense squeezing sensation, and hears a high pitch noise, and feels pressure on all sides of her head, and feels like there's some kind of crushing on her skull. So you get the picture. It's a pretty difficult process, this re-entering the body, and in her case, it is quite painful. And it's not just the physical sensations and difficulties of coming back in. There's the whole realization that you're no longer in this peaceful state with loving beings. You're back in this world, which is testing. And look, I want to throw some positives and more loving descriptions of this life in there, because I know I can tend to focus on the challenges and the difficulties and the darkness this planet has. But it's weird, isn't it? It's this fine balance. Like, you'll have moments like that. Well, I do. I know there's probably some out there that just experience love and light all the time, and that's what I'm trying to get to in my own experience. But yeah, for me, I talk about this a lot. I know I talk about and repeat myself, but yeah, it's like it's this balance between the pits of darkness, and then you'll have moments of elation and joy, and it's this roller coaster ride of feeling like you want to live in this life forever. When those moments are good, to those moments where you just want it to be over, when you're in those deeper, darker places. And I know I probably have some tendency to be more depressed, which draws me to the more darker and negative aspects of this life. But when it is good, this life is pretty amazing, and you can see beauty just about everywhere you look, and be grateful for the body you're in and the miraculous nature of your existence, and to think that this is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we're able to do, experience, feel, and get to go back to this dimension where it's nowhere near as draining as this one can be. There's a lot to be happy about and grateful for, and in the meantime, although you are aware of these peaks and troughs, you just got to make the most of it and try to gravitate towards the love as much as you can, which I know is not easy, but this is what I try to do. And hopefully your experiences are going as well as possible. So what happens next? So she's popped back into her body. She says, look, I never saw angels, I never heard God, but she says she never heard God, but she was communicating with a being, and God, as we know, can take on many different forms. So she does hear this music, and like I said earlier, this is the most profound part of what she experienced. And she says this is potentially because the reason she reckons she didn't see angels or anything like that is because she was an atheist and never really had any religious teachings, and never had her mind conditioned into what heaven might actually be like. So for her, the heaven was the music, and this is why she thinks this was the most profound part of her near-death experience, rather than anything religious, which is possible. This is what happened to her, and this is her theory, so why not? I believe her. And then she gets a bit of confirmation for what happened in her experience. She says the doctor comes to visit her the next day and says, look, I felt something sort of hovering out of my shoulder while we were operating on you during those couple of minutes you were dead. You didn't happen to pop out of your body, did you? And she's like, yeah, I did actually. That was me. I was watching over your shoulder for quite a while. And she feels quite happy to be validated by this information. But, the surgery doesn't work to fix her body, for her hands and arms are still very sore. So she has this idea that the music she heard in this near-death experience is her ticket to getting her body to heal. And she goes on a bit of a search and ends up in a little cottage by a creek in a redwood forest, which sounds like heaven to me, and finds that she gets very connected to nature there. She hears the birds, the wind, the creek, and finds that just being in this environment is helping her heal and helps sharpen her brain function and brings clarity to her existence. And then one day, while she's in this cottage, she's meditating, and singing to herself, and then boom, suddenly that sound of what she experienced in this other realm is back inside her, and she's reliving that in this life, which goes back to what I was saying. Like, I know I didn't go into that. Sorry, I'm getting confused with another episode I did. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, so she says, I like it at the very last line. She says here, my death was a blessing and my rebirth is still unfolding. I can relate to that. Not that I nearly died to get my spiritual awakening kick-started. I have nearly died many times, but it was never an NDE that caused me to rethink my outlook on this life. It was other factors which I won't go into now, but yeah, and I feel the same way. My rebirth is still unfolding. It's a journey, this life, and you never know what direction it's going to take. And yeah, I guess that's what makes it this exciting adventure, is not knowing what's around the corner, and just living each moment and trying to exist in a way that is enjoyable to experience within your inner self. That's my goal anyway, to just try and be happy in my own skin, or content, I guess, because happy leads to sadness. So just content to be in this present moment, and not to need anything else. This is what I feel this rebirth is sort of teaching me, is what I need to kind of embrace. And everyone's going to have their own spiritual journey. You know yourself, what is unfolding in your own life, obviously, and what part spirituality is playing in that. And I don't think you've found this topic, this podcast, by accident. It's probably a sign that your soul is craving the answers, like a bit like mine. Well, not your soul, but your soul's pushing your ego to find some connection to something more than this physical realm. And this is a very good topic to learn more about everything spiritual, because it's not so based on religious philosophy. It's more, every week's a different experience, and everyone has a different way of tapping into God and learning more about that topic, which is why I love it so much. But having said that, there's a lot of common reappearing themes in these experiences that tell us that God is love, and that's where we go back to in a nutshell, which is a huge generalization, but from my research so far, that tends to be what they're saying. Like, but this love, it can be in all sorts of things. Like in this case, this lady never really says she talks to God. It's just the music that's profound, and this music is not like we experience on this plane. It's quite miraculous and mystical, and for me, that could be God. That could be God revealing itself to this soul in a way that this soul is able to relate to and love, and that's what it's all about. So thank you for listening to me again, and getting through to the end. I like to tell you that I love you, because that's a good way to express my gratitude for being able to share this information with you, and to remind you that we are all souls. We are all from the one source, and there's no point in us having difficulties or conflicts with each other. We should all just try and love each other and get past that ego need to control or want or fight, and just tried to tap into something a little bit deeper than that and go with that a bit more. So yeah, I love you and have a good week, and I'll talk to you next week. Goodbye.